talk about Brenden Martin, executive producer, making a lot of magic happen, shaking that coffee cup. I'm waiting for mine.
DoorDash.
That's right. DoorDash. Gotta love them. They'll get you food anywhere. Brenden, man, where do you start? We got so many good stories out there that are happening.
I don't know, man. It's crazy. There's good and there's bad. There's evil. There's not evil. It's like it's all falling apart, but it's all staying together. I don't know. Never been more interest.
Well, let's look at these headlines that you look at with what is happening. The women's basketball race is hot. I mean, it's a strong. It's strong football, basketball, and I'm looking here. The 6th ranked Alabama. You know, that 111-73 win over Mississippi State the other day. 22 3-pointers. That is hard to. I don't think it's ever happened before. Okay. So a lot happening there. And the weekend that we've got the games, Auburn going to Lexington, Florida hosting Texas A&M. Man, it is going to be a wild one. We got Coach Matt Dean on with us this morning. Doug Dean from Birmingham. Andy Burcham, voice of the Auburn Tigers, is going to check in. And, boy, he's had a front row seat all season long to this SEC race, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Looking forward to getting his insight. So take a picture with your phone of the QR code there. Follow us and subscribe there on X. It's at Rob Browne _. Share it with your friends, like it, and we love your comments and questions, Brenden. If people have questions, we'll answer them as best we can.
And if you're a Facebook person, you can just go search for Sidelines. Check us out right there at Sidelines. You'll see our logo. Go ahead and follow us there. You'll get notifications. And YouTube, SEC Sidelines Sports Network. Check it out. We've got lots of things coming. So.
Yeah, there is a lot. And Brenden, the weekend is upon us. And look, if you got a TV, you better get a bunch of them and get the multi-view when you stream. Because you got to have multi-view. I don't think there's anything else like that out there. So let's bring in Matt Dean with us.
Let's bring in Matt Dean and the chairman of the board.
And the chairman of the board, Doug Dean. The cousins from Birmingham, Memphis.
Welcome to the Dean and Dean show.
Yes.
I love it.
Dean.
I like the ring.
Dean of basketball.
Dean and Dean in the morning.
Yeah.
String music. Dean. That's another Dean.
Yeah. I was texting with Kevin Skarbinski last night. Today is going to be day 5 of 6 straight days of Alabama high school state championships going on. So, folks, if you're watching Alabama Public TV, watch Scarbo and the crew, because without that high school basketball, you don't have the college basketball. Of course, you can say you wouldn't have middle school and elementary basketball. So, hey, let me say something, too, about one of our viewers. I love her, Cheryl Chambers. This woman is incredible. She's got kids and grandkids for the Memphis Tigers, Ole Miss Rebels, Wake Forest, Florida Atlantic, FSU, and, of course, her beloved hometown, Memphis Grizzlies. Cheryl Chambers, I love you. And I'm wearing the official shirt of Glacier National Park, which I got at Hewlett and Dunn. And Brad Bellamy from Blanders will join us later. So, guys, all that being said, we just threw the ball up for the jump ball. And somebody jump in here first, and let's talk about the weekend that's upon us, because this SEC basketball season is as good as I've ever seen. We'll find out in March Madness if it's the best ever.
Rob, I will yield to the senator from Rhodes College, my brother Matt Dean.
I see it.
It's been a while, but I love that introduction, man. We talked about this yesterday. I just think, historically we talked about how tough it's been for Auburn to win at Rupp. I just think tomorrow, I think they handle their business, I think, pretty efficiently. I also think, I was looking at the menu of games. Obviously, we have Alabama at Tennessee, but I think a real intriguing matchup is going to be Vanderbilt at Missouri. I really do, because, we just talked about Vanderbilt yesterday. They're coming off another big win at Texas A&M. Missouri at home, guys, has been just tremendous. So really looking forward to those 3 games. But I think Auburn takes care of business. And I think, would that give them a share if they win tomorrow, or am I mistaken?
At least a share.
Myself?
Worst case is share. And, of course, Alabama's got to go to Knoxville.
Well, I think Alabama loses at Tennessee, and I think Auburn wins at Kentucky. That's my
man. I'm a great take, Matt. And sometimes we as fans, when I don't blame Big Blue for bragging, they've earned it with that, and Auburn not having any luck or not having any success. You don't win with luck normally, unless it's a full-length court buzzer beater. There's some luck in that. And bless the hearts of the Maryland, fear the turtle, Maryland, 3 straight games they got beat by buzzer beaters. But I digress.
Wow.
There's a reason. Don't overthink it, fans, especially Auburn fans. Why has Auburn lost so much at Rupp since '88? Because Kentucky's been great. And until Bruce Pearl, about 5 years in, Auburn has mostly sucked. There's your calculus. It would not be that surprising in this vicious best in history, certainly for the SEC. And you hear guys like Jay Billis, for heaven's sake, who likes to say "Go Blue Devils," but he's very fair. I love Billis' work. They're talking about this Auburn team. Let me back up. This SEC league is the strongest conference in the history of modern era basketball. So by definition, if you buy that argument, then you've got to say Auburn is in the conversation with the most dominant basketball teams in the modern era. That might be going too far. For all I know, Duke is the best team in the country. But how would we know when they're playing the 52nd ranked Ken Pom strength of schedule? That's not Duke's fault. Well, the tournament will answer that for us. But I think this Auburn team, whereas most teams, most normal human beings sitting 26-2, is that the record, Rob?
Yep.
And not having lost a single game on the road in the SEC would start wilting. They would start tightening up. Let's just not mess this up. What I saw the other night, and it was the kind of game I was hoping for. You take any kind of win in this SEC. I was hoping Auburn would start looking dominant again in all phases. They didn't play a perfect game. They sort of got complacent on defense heading into the first half, but then they corrected that. They just look loose and like they're enjoying how that all the parts work together. And if you want to stop Broome, you're going to pay for it somewhere else. So I think Kentucky can score in bunches, but so can Auburn. And the difference is Kentucky does not, so far, that could change tomorrow. They don't really like to play defense the way Bruce Pearl demands of his team. And again, in one game, that can absolutely change, and it's in Rupp Arena. But I think Auburn wins a tight one there, and it'll be fun to watch.
Yeah, Matt Dean, along the line of what he just said about defense, as a coach, every day in practice, how much time did you typically spend on defense and trying to teach people to, hey, let's run them off the 3-point line, and also just basic fundamentals? Because these games, as you get deeper into the season, come down to the free throw line way more often than you realize.
Yeah. The answer is a lot. And Doug, you're spot on with everything you said. I will say this, from a half-court perspective, we also always worked on 4-on-4, 3-on-3. You're talking about shell and help side, and you're talking about help and recover on 3-on-3. The thing that, you always you have a portion of practice. We did on ball screen defense, how we're going to attack the ball screen. But the thing that's tough when you prepare for a team like Auburn, and I would put Alabama in the same breath, is transition defense and how you recover and how fast they play the game. You can do a lot of things in half court, technique-wise, teaching point-wise, to talk about a half-court game. But the beauty of Auburn is, guys, I think they can play extremely fast. I think they can slow the tempo down, and they're effective because they're inside out. And honestly, I think the speed at what they play with sometimes is very tough for a defensive coach. But on the flip side, Bruce Pearl's a great defensive coach too. I think Auburn can guard you. They can guard you for 94 feet. They can guard you at 47 feet. They can just flat out guard. So we were talking yesterday, Doug, about the Big East in 1985 when you had I just looked up the standings. St. John's in the regular season was 15-1, and then Georgetown was 14-2. However, at 9-7 in league play, they went on to go 25-10 and won a national championship. Was Villanova. And even in that league, you had Syracuse and Villanova at 9-7. I think Pittsburgh was 8-8. But the problem is look at the SEC right now. I just mentioned Vanderbilt and Missouri. I mean, the depth of the SEC, we're talking, last I heard, Doug, probably right now 12 teams in the NCAA tournament, plus or minus one.
You don't even have to be 500 in the league to make the show.
No. And you can make an argument that one of the most intriguing teams in the country right now, I think, is Arkansas. After an 0-5 start, they're 6-4 in their last 10 SEC games. And I think down the stretch, if they can win, let's say they get to 8-10 and win 2 or 3 and win a couple games in the NCAA tournament, I think they're strongly in. Unless unless there's a lot of bid stealers out there, which happens a lot, but there's just not anyone close to the depth of our league this year.
Well, I want to ask you, both of y'all, and I want to start with Doug on this next one. Texas A&M and Buzz Williams. I'm just a big fan of his because of what he does with his teams and off the court as well. They got to play at Florida Saturday, Doug. What happens there? Because they've lost 3 in a row, and Gators are smarting after a loss to Georgia. That's a tough one.
Bruce has Matt's opinion on that too, but I am a big Buzz fan, and he earned it in a bunch of ways. But he has been over the years, he has been a problem for Bruce Pearl. The schemes and the style of play he brings to the table, and I don't know why. You win and lose with players more than scheme. Any coach will tell you that. But it's surprising that A&M is not surging at this point in the season, which if I'm a Florida Gator, having dropped that tough one, that, Florida's trying to hang on to that one line in the selection, and they can ill afford to lose to A&M tomorrow because it opens a door for somebody else, maybe even Tennessee. Am I wrong? Tennessee's sitting there 5th ranked in KenPom net rating. And so Florida, you can bet. Is that in Gainesville?
Yes. At the O-Dome.
I think advantage Florida. I think Florida is for real. They're one of the 3 or 4 teams that I would not want if I'm Bruce Pearl. You play whoever you get. But if you had your druthers, to quote Gene Stallings, your druthers would be, I don't want to face Florida again, at least until the Final Four. Then the worst case is you can say, hey, we made the Final Four if you can't prevail. But I think Florida's they're not going to play 2 bad games in a row, especially not back at home. Yeah. So I like Florida in that one, which only makes Texas A&M, Rob, more dangerous when Auburn has to go there Tuesday night. By the way, small subplot, but it could matter late season. Auburn gets the Tuesday night 8 p.m. game, so they get an extra day of rest. Alabama plays Wednesday night, and both these teams are well conditioned and can handle it. But that could be late game if Alabama and Auburn is tight. You could see that, just a smidge of a little more fatigue that Alabama's having to battle through when that March 8th game comes around.
Yeah, and along the line of what Doug just said, you've still got that March 8th game, the rematch of the IBOB. But Matt, Buzz Williams losing 3 in a row, he's desperate, but Florida's desperate for the 1 seed. How do you coach this one?
Well, I just looked at the schedule of those 3 losses. It doesn't surprise me, guys, that Tennessee went in there and won on the road because defense travels. But I just think what was really curious to me was them losing at home to Vanderbilt. Now, I know we just talked about Vanderbilt, but this league is so tough, guys. So, I really think Buzz's teams they're in a silo. They don't listen to the outside. They're in Buzz's world, and they cover all 3 elements I talked about. They can defend you in transition. They can defend you in the half court, and they're also very tough and physical when they get to the glass. So I really not, even if they lose a 4th in a row to Florida, I think it's more about how they play, in my opinion. Do they contest for 40? I mean, do they make it a 40-minute game? If they go in there and get smacked, which I do not expect, I think it to be a tight game, then I'd be a little concerned. But we talked, Doug, yesterday about it's such a grueling, long conference season. You're going to have these lulls. And at the end of the day, Buzz is just back in the lab right now trying to get his team on the right trajectory as they head in the SEC tournament. And I do think it's interesting that now Tennessee has kind of creeped into the one-line discussion with their recent play, and they had a huge win at Texas A&M. If they finish strong and Alabama loses 2 out of the 3, which I don't know how it's going to play out. I mean, I could also see, besides Auburn, 3 SEC teams, with Florida, Alabama, and Tennessee all in contention for the 1 line. And then also Duke and Houston are contention for the 1 line. That's my pool of 1 line seating as we go into a week before selection Sunday. And I could be missing someone.
Well, what I hope, and I'm completely partisan here on behalf of the SEC, but if we were in court, if we were in court, Your Honor, if the court would stipulate the following evidence, that means you agree to it, that the SEC is the far and away. There's some other great teams, Duke, Texas Tech, Houston. Houston's scary, but
they are.
And even, you could see someone like Michigan State or Wisconsin, Texas Tech get hot in the tournament. We know that. Everybody knows that. And there could be a team we haven't talked about. Was it a few years ago? FAU and some of these alphabet schools got hot.
St. John's.
I don't think this is one of those years. Of course, you're listening to a guy who's usually on the weekend 1. My bracket is in smithereens. But right now, I just think the SEC has to get 3 teams. They can decide which 3. I think Auburn is there. Auburn could lose 2 of these 3, maybe all 3, and still make the 1 seed. They just wouldn't be overall number 1 seed. Duke probably would, depending on tournaments and if they even give a crap about the tournament. They didn't a year ago. So I think the reason selfishly, Alabama, Auburn, Florida, possibly Tennessee fans should want 3 1 seeds. We're not going to get 4. They're going to give Duke a 1 seed. Yeah. We should want 3 because it avoids unfairly one of these great SEC teams from having to get eliminated because we play each other in the same regional.
Yeah, let me say something real quick about Winter Timber Outdoors, one of our sponsors. Love them. Athens, Alabama, growing all over the Southeastern Conference footprint. They are building a store right now in Auburn, and they're looking at other SEC locations, and something soon hopefully will be announced in the Memphis market. It's turkey season, Doug. You know it.
Still rabbit season. I'm going tomorrow morning.
Yeah, and rabbit hunting, they get you geared up there too, because you got to have the right gear and the colors. Some orange, obviously. Turkey hunting, it's about the camo. It's about the copper-plated 3.5, number 2, number 4 leads. But it's about the ground blinds. It's about the camo. And ultimately, it's about you being still, because people will tell you hunting a turkey is like chasing a ghost.
God, they have vision.
They do. And if they could smell like they see and hear, you'd never get them. But look, Winter Timber Outdoors has all your needs, your box calls, your slate calls, everything for your gear, Sitka, duck camp, Dixie decoys, deer stands, food for your deer plots, for your food plots, everything. Winter Timber Outdoors, and they're open every day of the week. Athens, Alabama, right outside of Huntsville. Get geared up. Kenny Winter and the crew there. They're into the outdoors, and you will be too. Love these people as a sponsor. I want to throw this one at y'all because on the headlines that Brenden, the stuff that he does to make this show what it is, it's mind-boggling. He puts these headlines, news and notes, and we're not going to spend much time on it, but I'm going to throw it out there. One of the things that is trending right now out there is the sports industry is confronting a significant crisis with increasing incidents of game fixing and gambling scandals. Recent cases involved college game fixing at institutions like Temple University, Fresno State, and the University of New Orleans, leading to the suspension or dismissal of players. Better keep your eyes on that one. Doug has a cool story, Matt, and I know, Matt, as a coach, you probably had a talk or two with your team over the years and as an athletic director about it. And after you respond to this, Matt Dean, Doug's got a cool story that I want him to tell because, Matt, you're going to love it.
Matt, before I do, what state did you grow up in, Matt?
I am from the great state of Iowa, Eastern Iowa, Davenport, Iowa.
Quad Cities.
At heart.
Man, if you know anybody with a couple of 100 acres deer hunting up there, let me know.
That's what Rob always tells me. I didn't.
It's all about hunting.
He tells me.
All right, so I'll try to be concise. I struggle with that, Rob. What's an English major going to do but run their mouth? Because when you graduate, you're unemployable until you build some actual business skills.
You're very smart. Don't
stop. None of this is original. People can read and research, and like I always say, if you use one source and don't credit them, Matt, that's plagiarism. But if you get 3 or 4 sources, it's research. And so this is a story about Nolan Richardson, but this is also I think timely because it's a cautionary tale to the Auburn Tigers feeling invincible. Bruce knows better. These players know, but they've seen heartbreak. You only have to go back to the Yale game a year ago. Duke might need this cautionary tale, thinking that they're invincible. And there's several others: Houston, Alabama, Florida. You pick your teams that look like they will be, pretty, couple of them heavy favorites to win it all, or at least make the Final Four. But, you have no guarantees when you enter March Madness. Come with me, Gen Z and millennials, if you would, back to the 1978-79 basketball season. And I doubt that anyone outside of Terre Haute, Indiana, had ever heard of a sycamore. And I refer, as you guys know, to the Indiana State Sycamores. And you may have heard of a kid named Larry Bird that was on their team.
Yeah.
And they were preseason unranked, despite that not being, Larry Bird wasn't a freshman or sophomore. I guess that was his senior year. And they were unranked heading into that magical 78-79 season. They go undefeated all the way through their regular season and their Missouri Valley Conference tournament. And Larry Bird is named National Player of the Year, rightly so. And then as they got into NCAA tournament, they ran roughshod through, had one close game, and they were able to beat DePaul by 2 points, putting themselves in the national championship game against
a great DePaul team too.
Yes. Thank you and you have some knowledge of that.
Ray Myers.
Great. And that DePaul team could have been worthy of winning it all. But they go against a very good, but a Michigan State team that had 6 losses. You may have also heard of a kid named Irvin Johnson on that Michigan State team. Magic, if you prefer his nickname. Yeah. And so that epic national championship game was set up, and in the most cruel fate, if you're a Sycamore fan, and I think almost everyone who doesn't pull for Michigan State was just that's that tournament championship. But Michigan State takes down the Sycamores and Larry Bird in a 75-64 win by Michigan State. Got to be heartbreaking. So after all of that magical year, the Sycamores finished 33-1. Now here's the fun punchline following that is Nolan Richardson, the great Nolan Richardson, and his 40 minutes of hell that we all just dreaded having to deal with in Bud Walton Arena, at a toast of Larry Bird that you can easily find on social media or YouTube. Richardson talks about how he was driving, and it was a Indiana State versus New Mexico State. I think it was in the tournament on March 3, 79. And he says, I only had radio listening to this game. And Richardson had gone to UTEP, which was just up the road in El Paso from New Mexico State. He was pulling for Indiana State because he wanted New Mexico State to lose. We know how that goes. And he says, I'm listening to the radio and I have no clue about the players on either team. And I keep hearing the announcer saying, Bird just moves to the right and scores, and Bird scored again. And look at that pass Bird just made, and Bird this and Bird that. And Richardson tells the audience, who the hell is this Bird guy? And he goes on. I'd never heard of him. He goes on, and the game finishes, and Indiana State prevails. And Richardson says, he said, I said to myself, man, that brother can play. He said,
That's right.
In the most glorious racial profiling that everyone, including Magic Johnson and Larry Bird, both love, and they're dying laughing in the audience, Nolan Richardson said, you can imagine my surprise when I got my newspaper the next morning and I looked and I see this picture of Larry Bird and I said, damn. And you know exactly what he meant by that.
That's great.
So, yeah, there are no guarantees, and that's the cruelty of a one-game elimination. You got to win 6 games. That is hard as hell. It might be harder if you are a 1 seed because you're supposed to win.
Yeah. Now, listen,
right.
I want to say something. See this cup I'm holding up, Bim Bam Burgers and Breakfast. If you go to Oxford, Mississippi, you're down there for an Ole Miss game or something, go to Bim Bam. It's over on Jackson Avenue. It's a friend of mine, Erica, and Brenda's daughter, Barnwood Brenda. She's the one who makes the SEC map for me and all this cool Barnwood furniture. Bim Bam has a breakfast that Jethro Bodine would not be able to finish. Bacon, eggs, country ham, grits, hash browns, Mama's cat head biscuits, which are absolutely unbelievable. You've got to go there, and they've got the great Bim Bam burger bites. They even made the Wagyu burgers for a while. They might still have them, but that's a cool place to go. That's a cool story. And Matt Dean and Doug Dean, 79, Dick Enberg, that Indiana State, Michigan State game, that made March Madness what it is, I think, more than anything I can ever remember, Matt.
You know, Doug, that brings back memories. A lot of people don't realize that DePaul team had Mark Aguirre, I believe, Terry Cummings, I think Dave Corzine. That was a huge win by Indiana State in the semis. But how about this,
took Larry Bird to a 2-point
team in that
game.
Final Four? That's right. But Penn, University of Penn, was the other team in the Final Four that year, and Michigan State obviously blew them out in the semis. Fast forward a year, the last year my Iowa Hawkeyes made the Final Four, 1980. Iowa goes to Indianapolis, loses in the semis to Dr. Duncanstein, Darrell Griffith of Louisville. Our point guard, Ronnie Lester, stud, drafted by the Lakers, ends up hurting his knee with about 10 minutes to go in the first half. It was such a great game. Hawks end up losing 80-72. But Doug, the last thing I want to say, I got to go, Rob. But you know, we've talked in the SEC all about great football teams, and we should, deservedly so. Legacy, Saban, going back to Auburn's last national title, right?
Georgia.
But in basketball, the beauty of basketball is the Doug Dean story from 78-79. Those little individual nuggets you don't get as much in other sports, in my opinion. Basketball in March presents us so many romantic moments. I can still remember watching that game on Monday night on the floor with my family, just introduced to, I was 12 years old. It was unbelievable what that game did for college basketball.
I'm a football guy, but basketball's the final. This March Madness is far more compelling as an event than the football championship because it involves so many teams across the fruited plain.
Well, when I was in middle school at PDS in sixth grade, we got to play the teachers in a basketball game. That was always a big deal. And we got to play war ball. And I'll never forget hitting one of my teachers that made me mad right in the swimsuit area and knocked him off his feet.
Is that
dodgeball, war ball, whatever.
Okay.
Knocked him off his feet. Coach Condon. Good man, but I got him back. But Matt, I hate that you got to go. Andy Burcham, voice of the Auburn Tigers, is going to be on with us.
Travel day
but
for Dino.
Doug Dean, let me tell you something. We're going to have like Kevin Skarbinski, Matt Dean, Coach John Brady, some of these basketball savants. Now Led Zeppelin, you can't ever bring back John Bonham, but you still got John Paul Jones, Jimmy Page, and that Robert Plant guy. I love basketball.
And that before Matt gets away, and use that story early and often, Matt, when you're on air elsewhere. But
I love
that Indiana State team with Larry Bird was the juice. That was the deepest run by a first-time participant in the Division I tournament, and that was the last time Indiana State did not make a postseason appearance again until 2000. So that's amazing. One player in basketball can make a hell of a difference, can't they?
Yes, they can. Without question. That's the beauty of it. Doug, it's a pleasure to see you. I got to do this more often with you. Rob, have a great weekend. I'll be in the great city of St. Louis, Missouri for the next 72 hours, and I will.
One of the
guys.
greatest cities in America. Have fun in Laclede's Landing too, down there by the Arch. Yeah, take care. Doug Dean, Andy Burcham going to join us here in just a minute.
The great
What you
Andy
just
Burcham.
said he's awesome. He's from Carbondale, Illinois. Down there, went to Southern Illinois University, the Salukis.
I think he's a St. Louis Cardinal fan.
Oh, yeah, I think so. I'm telling you, you're right about Illinois. People don't realize how rural Illinois is, man. I mean, you get outside of Chicago, it is cornfields and
it's great. I love
gas station food. I mean, it's
salt of the earth. They're
white-tailed deer like you've never seen.
That's where our food comes from, heavily. Hardworking, great people, and they'll be the first to tell you, hey, I know we're in Illinois. We're frustrated too with how political power gets distributed in the great state of Illinois.
Well, I just think the Illinois, Chicago, they used to have really good basketball. When Ray Myers was coaching at DePaul, that was pretty strong. There's no excuse for you not to have a great program there at Chicago, but college basketball in the SEC. By the way, it's Charles Barkley's 62nd birthday. To me, it is just what he's done for basketball. And you look at SEC Network, look at all these guys like Patrick Young from Florida, the shooter, Pat Bradley. It's getting better and better. And I'm looking here right now, Doug, at this weekend. It's like football season. You can't get it. You can't get enough of it.
Man, have people over, fire up the grill or however you like to cook, and you can. I need to do this multi-view TV. You and Brenden were talking about.
Yeah,
I'm having to go bounce back previous channel, bounce back and forth between games. But there are 5 or 6 games I don't want to miss this weekend. It's going to be a lot of fun.
I can tell you, watching that multi-view, you get you get so much when you watch it. You can see 4 games at once, and you pick one that you watch, and it has audio, and then you can make it the complete screen as well. But that's what you need in a season. But they'll throw in like a Big East game, a couple of SEC games, and maybe a Big 12 game. So you get a little bit. It's like kind of a tapas restaurant where you get a little meat, a little chicken, a little seafood. But Doug, talk if you can, and Andy's going to join us in a minute. Again, happy birthday to Charles Barkley, 62 today. Looks like he's 30. But the March Madness that we all know came about because of an underdog from French Lick, Indiana, Larry Bird and Magic Johnson. That got us hooked. Dick Enberg, Kenny Loggins' song, If This Is It, Make No Mistake. We still watch that and hear that song. That's the greatest marketing campaign for any sport I've ever seen. And other than Joe Namath guaranteeing the Super Bowl while he's drinking a cocktail sitting by the pool, you can't make it up.
I was wondering, Brenden, if Rob Browne's steel trap for a brain fails us, which is rare, Brenden can find it quickly. But when did they start using the term March Madness?
I know that they
80s maybe? 80s?
They copyrighted it. They own the rights to that. Yeah.
Because now you have to be careful when and where you use that term.
The bottom line is, it's like the Super Bowl. They try to get you on that. But I'm just looking at it and saying to myself, I think that the interest in college football is carrying over into college basketball, Doug, because the money that people are spending on basketball. And I think with these NIL collectives, you're starting to get more of a grassroots populist fan base going, hey, I'm giving $25 or $50 a month. I'm going to go watch my investment play. I think, and you look at what's the biggest, look at the numbers on TV for college basketball. I mean, they're not as big as football. I just sit there and I say to myself, what do we need to do to make this thing better? We'll get in there. But The Big 12 the last few years has been the best league.
It's going to be cyclical. SEC won't dominate this year in, year out.
Well, nobody, and I don't think we're going to have dynasties in football like we've had.
No, it would be shocking. I do think if you get a dynasty, boy, I'm not going to win friends in the SEC saying this. In some ways, Rob, I think it's more possible for a program like an Ohio State, if Oregon can start playing real big boy defense, maybe. And the reason I say that is those Big Ten programs don't have to play 5 or 6 brutal toss-up games like you will in the SEC. So I just don't think, and part of it's Saban being gone from the sidelines, and Kirby, he can't just go buy the best roster in football every single year. Now there are 10 or 12 teams that can do that. So I think it would be more shocking that we have any given D1 program, for example, winning 4 out of 10 national championships. It's ridiculous to ask for more than 3 or 4. I don't think we'll even have that. I think over the next 10 years, you will have someone will repeat once. I don't think you will get a single 3-peat.
Yeah. All I got to see right now is looking at this guy that's on the TV right now with us from Carbondale, Illinois. Yes, Andy Burcham, the voice of the Auburn Tigers.
We are not worthy, Andy.
Andy, I sorry about the technical difficulties. Sometimes that happens. Nothing ever goes wrong during a live broadcast, Andy, does it?
Right.
Everything's
sure. Perfect. Everything's great.
Yeah. Hey, I tell people nothing against those guys on TV, but I've got a ritual started as a kid. I still got my little white transistor radio, but I listen on the Auburn app. You and Randall Dickey, and I miss Coach Smith so badly on those games. But I don't know how you find these guys, but Randall Dickey, Coach Dickey, is so cool. He's kind of Matt Dillon as the color man from Gunsmoke. He doesn't get rattled, and I love the enthusiasm in your voice. I still think you are a young Jack Joe Buck hybrid is what you are as a broadcaster. You put so much time and preparation into every game. You cover, obviously, Auburn, but you see the SEC in a way that very few people do. It's like talking to a neurosurgeon when you have a headache. So welcome to Sidelines. Talk a little about it. A native of Carbondale, Illinois, a Saluki, and I'm going to guess, like Doug said, a lifelong St. Louis Cardinals baseball fan, Anheuser-Busch, Mike Shannon, and Jack Buck. How are you?
That's what I grew up with. And my folks were from the west part of Indiana. Dad was a huge Stan Musial fan. I have a framed program from a Cardinals Cubs game at Wrigley that my father got signed by Stan Musial and was so rattled that the program is signed upside down. So that's why the program and the frame is upside down, because there's Stan. Yes, I grew up a Cardinal fan. I grew up a football Cardinal fan, a St. Louis Blues fan, listening to Camo X. Actually, I grew up in Nashville, Illinois, which is 50 miles north of Carbondale.
Okay.
You were talking about that Indiana State team. That's my alma mater. I went to Indiana State.
Oh, wow. Wow.
I was 4 years behind Larry Bird. My father is an Indiana State grad. So we were Sycamore fans, and obviously when Larry Bird came through, that was incredible. I got to meet him one time. I was stammering when I did. I mean, he is still maybe my single favorite athlete of all time.
Yeah.
But anyway, all that to say, yes.
Rob, my timing on that story impeccable with Andy?
That was great. That's fabulous.
Clairvoyant.
Yeah.
I got to see Bird play at SIU his junior year, and they came in undefeated, lost the game to SIU. He scored like 35 in the game, but Indiana State lost it. Anyway, this has been a remarkable season for Auburn. You guys were talking about these last 3 games now of the SEC schedule, and Auburn goes to Kentucky, plays at noon tomorrow, then at Texas A&M on Tuesday, and then back at home for the second game against Alabama a week from tomorrow. And it's been a remarkable year for this Auburn team in the best conference in the country and one of the best conferences we've ever seen in college basketball, period. I mean, when the Joe Lenardis of the world are talking 12, 13 teams, it's remarkable that are going to make the NCAA tournament. And I think of that story from Greg Sankey in his first year as commissioner. And that year, the SEC had three teams in the tournament. And he knew at that point that the league has to get better. And they have taken the steps, and they have hired folks from an SEC standpoint. The coaches in this league right now are remarkable. Their schedules are remarkable, and it has come to fruition now that this is the best college basketball conference maybe we've ever seen at this point. And this Auburn team at this moment has one loss so far. Now, three really, really tough games left for Auburn with Kentucky, where Auburn hasn't won since 1988. A buzzer beater by John Kaler in 1988 is the last time Auburn's won at Rupp Arena. And then you go to Texas A&M, and that's always a tough matchup. A Buzz Williams team is always a tough matchup. And then you come back home and you get Alabama coming in here a week from Saturday in what will be just a crazy, crazy day at Neville Arena.
Andy,
but I am blessed to be a part of it, let me tell you.
Listen, you're getting immortalized with a season like this, Andy. I love your calls, love it. And I'm with Rob as a devout Auburn guy. Try to be fair to all the teams because their fans are as passionate across the SEC as anywhere. But when you're having a magical year like this, I pull the Auburn app up, and the only thing I'm having to calibrate and tweak a little is there's usually an annoying 3 to 5 second gap between you guys. And so sometimes I will actually pause. Pro tip here, listeners, I'll pause the TV if it's ahead by 3 seconds and then get y'all synced up, and it's just beautiful. Talk about this team. What I saw the other night, I really wanted you take any win at this point in the SEC, and there's not an ugly win as good as the league is. But I felt like what the prescription that Auburn's team needed, this whole program needed going into Rupp Arena for obvious reasons, a drought since '88. And that's mostly because Kentucky was damn good and Auburn was trying to revive its program. And if you look at the last, 6 or 8 games, Bruce is holding his own and then some against Kentucky. But the other night, it looked to me like Auburn, where most teams at 25-2 trying to get to 26 wins would wilt and tighten up, like let's play not to lose. This team looks loose and they're having fun, and Bruce and his staff are calling plays that allow for these thunder dunks, and they're playing defense and joyful in playing defense. They don't look like a team they can lose any of these next 3, but it won't be, in my opinion, because they feel the pressure and tighten up. Your thoughts?
Well, I think one of the reasons, and I agree with what you said, it's an experienced team. There's 9 seniors that are playing on this team right now. I mean, you don't see that very often in this day and age. So I think that's one. You have the best player in the country in Johni Broome, who the last 2 ball games has looked more like the Johni Broome we saw before his ankle injury against South Carolina. There's that pep in the step and his moves to the basket. And going into, some folks were concerned about Auburn. This is so odd. Folks were concerned about Auburn wins against Georgia and Arkansas because they weren't the blowout wins that we've seen from Auburn this year. But Bruce Pearl put this pretty well. After that Arkansas team came in here and Auburn beat them, they went home and beat a red-hot Missouri team.
Yeah.
After Georgia came in and Auburn beat them by 12, they went home and beat Florida.
Close win doesn't look so bad, does it?
Yeah, that Florida team, even though with that loss at Georgia, that Florida team's playing for a number 1 seed in the NCAA tournament. Missouri's probably going to be a 3 or a 4 seed, and I may be underestimating the Tigers there. So, we'd all like to see Auburn go out and win the game by 30 like it did the other night against Ole Miss, but we're talking about the best league in the country. And as tough as Neville Arena is, and I think it's the best home court advantage you're going to find anywhere, these are really good basketball teams coming in. Now, Auburn has wrapped up that 3-game homestand and really looked good against Ole Miss. I mean, Auburn shot the ball almost 60% in that game. But now you've got 2 in a row on the road in the two of the toughest environments that Auburn will play in this season.
Good test.
Yeah, Andy, you have a great view, you and Randall Dickey, of the SEC that nobody else really has. Again, let's go back to that Florida matchup with Auburn. And my friend, the late Mark Green, who I call him the original blogger, him and Mark Murphy inside the Auburn Tigers, we used to talk about there's matchups and then there's matchups on game day.
Right.
Florida's got 5 now that, Handgleiten is in there, 5 big, tall guys in there. Talk about that Florida team and just kind of take us around the SEC from your perspective, because we all need to hear what your thoughts are.
Yeah. Florida matches up very well with Auburn. And one of the reasons is its size. Okay. Another reason is it plays really well defensively. And I'm not sure Auburn's going to be able to surprise Todd Golden because Todd Golden played for Bruce Pearl in the Maccabi games when they went to Israel and has coached under Bruce Pearl on this staff at Auburn. Yeah. So you're not – and vice versa. These two teams aren't going to surprise each other from a coaching perspective, okay? Yeah. And let me say this, guys. Florida came in and beat Auburn. That was no fluke.
Not at all.
That day. When you come to Neville and score 90 on Auburn.
14 threes, was it?
Yeah, it was a terrific. It was I cannot take anything away from that day against Florida. Yeah. And they're even better now, as you mentioned, with Handgleiten back from the gruesome leg injury that he sustained early in that game against Auburn in the championship game of the SEC tournament last year. So they're even better now, and that
loss appears to have helped this Auburn team, if that's possible, Andy.
I do think this. I think it kind of it may have refocused Auburn a little bit. Bruce told us he thought he could see it coming, and it was a perfect storm that day. Florida came in red hot. Auburn did not shoot the ball very well, and Florida beat Auburn. I mean, that's the bottom line in that game. But I think Auburn has played better since then, since that loss to Florida.
Andy, I really appreciate, and to me, because of the data that's available beyond eye test, that's the most annoying term that's been invented in recent memory, football and basketball. Because eye test to me is code language for you can vote for whoever you want without data backing it up. And so I appreciate you assertively saying, not with any weakness, that Johni Broome is the best player in the country, the national player of the year, because we all absolutely admire the work you're seeing from Cooper Flagg. But at some point, strength of schedule, it's not Duke's fault that they're playing the 52nd ranked Ken Palm strength of schedule, and Auburn's back at number 1. And I might add jokingly that Auburn's strength of schedule is that strong despite not being able to play Auburn. Which everybody else we play gets some bonus points, even in a loss, for strength of schedule. Cooper Flagg's great, but if their metrics are close, and actually Broome's metrics and analytics are slightly ahead on more of them, especially against top 50 competition, then the voters, if they aspire to being fair, and not all will, there'll be regional bias, always is. But I don't see how you unless things dramatically change with very few games left, I don't see how Broome does not win that National Player of the Year honor.
Well, I'd like to say that I look at this from an objective viewpoint, but I don't. I mean, I see Johni game in and game out. I watch the work that he's done and the schedule that Auburn has played. And Cooper Flagg is a magnificent player. Guys, he's going to be the number 1 draft pick. When they have the NBA draft this year, I think his name will be the number 1 pick. And the upside for that young man is fabulous. And we've seen him, and he was terrific against Auburn at Duke earlier this year. I will take nothing away from Cooper Flagg, all right? But Duke plays in an ACC that is not terrific. It's not the ACC that we've seen in the past. On the other hand, Johni Broome plays in the SEC, and it's not the conference that we've seen in the past either. It's as good as we have ever seen. I truly believe the Southeastern Conference this year is as good as we've ever seen, period, in college basketball. And this Auburn team has one loss in it. And Johni Broome, game in and game out, is a double-double machine. He needs one more double-double, and was within one rebound the other night, and they took him out of the ball game. Didn't put him back in to get the rebound for a double-double. He's one rebound away from tying the Auburn school record for 18 double-doubles in a season for Mike Mitchell back in the mid-'70s. All right?
Wow.
That's how long that record has stood at Auburn, and he's going to get it in one of these last 3 regular season games, or the SEC tournament or the NCAA tournament. I was watching you guys prior to coming on, and you mentioned the Yale game a year ago.
Yeah.
Let me tell you what, guys, that Yale, I was watching game day when Auburn went to Alabama, and I'm guessing that it was an Alabama fan had a Yale flag right behind the game day guys.
They would never do that, Andy.
You got to love them.
You know what, though, guys? I'm glad they did. I'm glad they did, because that's a reminder of what can happen to you in an NCAA tournament. Because Auburn goes into that red hot after winning the SEC tournament and goes all the way to Spokane, Washington. And, you're talking about, guys, we had packed for those 2 games and to go to Boston for the Sweet 16. We were not coming back to Auburn. All right. I've never packed as much. And I went to Italy this summer. I've never packed as much as I did for that. And we were there for one game. And I'm telling you, that Yale game is referred to by Bruce Pearl all the time with this team.
Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, forget rival fans, they're going to do what they do. And Auburn people are the same. But Bruce had that reminder in the locker room heading into this season.
Yes,
and that's tricky. It can sort of work on you and be something that weighs. I think Bruce was smart, and it lit a fire with this team. Don't let important games have a margin of error being single digit deep into the second period.
Andy, I do think that this is a much different team this year than that team.
They're not mentally fragile.
Was a year ago.
And you know what else? We don't turn the ball over. I'm not going to name any former Auburn players from a year ago. Love them all, but this team is incredible for the most part in valuing the ball. And I've noticed Bruce talks about shot selection. There are moments where you don't want to drive it into the paint in the trees and increase your risk of a turnover. That Pettiford dagger late in the Alabama game comes to mind. Nobody under the basket. It was higher percentage to go ahead and take a 3 if you're Pettiford than to try to drive it and lose the ball.
Well, back to your turnovers. The last 2 ball games, Auburn's had 8 turnovers a game. And Ole Miss turns everybody over more than anybody else in this league. And Auburn had 8 against the Rebels.
And Broome, double doubles don't include assists normally, but what I'm more and more admiring, and you can bet NBA scouts are, is his vision in passing the ball is unbelievable, and it's leading to some important assists that usually end in a score.
He leads Auburn in assists. Yeah. Auburn's 6'11" guy is the team leader in assists and blocks and rebounds and points.
That pass, Baker Mazzara lobs it to Broome, draws the defense. He lobs it to Cardwell. That's just got to frustrate opponents.
Could you imagine if Joe Dean was broadcasting SEC basketball right now?
Which Joe Dean? Which Joe Dean? The father or the son?
Joe Dean Sr. The big guy.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
But Buddy Martin just sent me a picture, and I'll blow it up here. Look at this for the birthday boy, Charles Barkley.
Absolutely.
And look at
we
those
saw him
shorts.
The other night. He was here. He was at the game Wednesday, so we got to shake his hand.
Man,
when I see Charles at Buc-ee's, now I know I'm not supposed to go try to talk to Charles.
But here's the thing: a little string music in downtown Lexington, KY. I remember Vanderbilt's point guard Barry Goheen used to drive Sonny Smith crazy, and he would shoot it up. He goes, a little string music downtown Nashville, Tennessee, Stufferino. Joe, I mean, how much fun would Joe Dean have today? And Andy, you have been on the broadcast team at Auburn since I think 1988, and you are such a pro. And this is Brad Bellamy's going to join us now from one of our sponsors, LandersFordMemphis.com. And I just want to say, Doug, when you watch and you see Andy coming out after the game, you know, and we were talking to him after I think the Auburn Texas A&M game, and you were getting at the end of the season, you were getting on the road to go to Hawaii for a basketball tournament, and I mean, you're all over the place. But you do football, you do basketball, you do baseball. We've got this Coach Butch Thompson comes on the show, and Jason Caldwell was on yesterday. I think baseball might be your truest love, and that's a tribute to you, how great you are with the football and the basketball. But your signature tagline is "Yes." I mean, when and you know, Jim Fife would always say, "Hello, Brantley, Alabama." When you know, there's nothing better. Radio, listening on the radio to me is like taking art lessons from Michelangelo.
TV doesn't have to paint a picture, do they?
The guys that I listened to growing up, when I knew at that point that this is what I wanted to do for a living, I was 6, and the Cardinals won the World Series in 1967, and my dad brought home the album of the highlights of that season. And I'm listening to Harry Carey and Jack Buck. That's 2 pretty good ones, you know what?
Completely sober.
And Dan Kelly was doing the St. Louis Blues games. I mean, we're talking 3 of the all-time great voices ever, and those are the 3 that I listened to growing up. And so that's you know, and I've worked with other people in Carbondale. Rob, you mentioned I worked with Mike Reese, who was the legendary voice at SIU Carbondale for 42 years.
Wow.
And I learned more radio from him than anyone that I've ever worked with. So I've been very fortunate. I've been blessed to learn from and listen to some of the all-time greats.
Well, and it shows, but you have your own unique style. I can tell you that you have an excitement and a richness and authentic voice that's wow, it's powerful. Brad Bellamy.
Andy, before we pitch to Brad, hey Brad, how are you?
Good morning, Doug.
I need a favor,
Hi,
Andy, if you can work this through your channels. Can we get any crew other than Pat Adams' crew to? I know you can't answer that question, but it's not that I want to whine about calls. I have
zero input in that, and that's probably a good thing.
I know that. I totally know. But I just want the game to finish inside of 3 hours with all these reviews late game. Brad, how are you?
Man, it would help if ESPN would remember that you're not going to get through a game in 2 hours either.
Yeah. Brad Bellamy, LandersFordMemphis.com, one of our sponsors. We're so proud to be associated with y'all. Tell folks real quick what's going on out there at Landers. It's beautiful today. Birds are singing. Tomorrow's March 1st. March Madness is already underway.
Man, birds are singing. Deals are happening, Rob. Ready to take care of anybody and everybody, man. Up to $14,000 off. It's truck month. Talked about it the last couple of weeks. Not just that, guys, but it's truck month on Lightning, too. The Ford Power Promise gets you an EV charger for your house, including standard installation, plus 0 for 72, and big rebates and discounts, and the tax rebate, too, that exists on Lightning. So up to $14,000 off F-150 and Lightning. And, man, we got good deals on Bronco. We talked a lot about Bronco. Yeah. Still waiting for our producer to come up to Memphis and pick his out.
That's right.
But, eventually it's going to happen. I have full faith and confidence that that's one. And don't forget, we'll give you that $500 extra discount for being a listener of the show. Just bring it on and tell us about it. So, Rob, it was great to meet your wife finally last week. So thanks for having her stop by.
Yep. We loved it.
It worked out well, too, because those cookies became a nice little present for my daughter after her play of Andy Jr.
Deal.
So thank
Brad,
you for helping
your guys,
Friday.
Brad, your guys are on fire since that 1-2 game in T-Town. What are you seeing?
I mean, last week we talked a little bit about it and, talked about Arkansas too and what they needed to do. And I think they're probably going to play themselves in after a couple of wins. So, it's going to be an exciting March. Now it's about the time of year I start paying attention to college basketball. So, looking forward to that. But, to bring up, you guys were just talking about it, but, I think one of the things I don't know how you put it back in the box, but man, the end of college basketball games are awful. I mean, they take forever. Brutal. You can get through a whole entire first half and what it takes to get through the last 5 minutes of a college basketball game. And the NCAA really needs to figure this out. I mean, some of these things that they're reviewing at home, we can see it pretty obviously, and it takes them 5 minutes, 8 minutes to make a decision that might not even have that. I mean, it's an 8-point game, guys. Why do we? I mean, let's go. You got
Yeah.
30 seconds left.
And coaches are using it to get a free timeout.
Yeah.
I mean, it's awful. And I think, as audiences are being, giving so many different things they can watch and so many things they can see. I mean, it's so much different than the old Jefferson Pilot days where we had about 2 games to choose from.
Yeah.
And when you got that and everything else in the world that now is at our fingertips, they got to figure that out.
Andy, along those lines, the end of the game, you and Randall Dickey, you got your producers. There's a lot going on in there. Kind of build off of what Brad just said. The last 7 seconds of the Florida-Georgia game the other night, to borrow the line from SpongeBob SquarePants, 3 days later, it took forever. And what's the limit on timeouts? I mean, it's just, Brad's right. It's in 2 hours, they need to be 2.5 hour slots.
Well, I agree with that. Just because you're getting games that you can't go from one game to the other now. You're starting on one platform and then finishing on the other, and I understand that. And sometimes we get the dreaded slide. That's the one thing you don't want to hear on the radio side. All right, it's a 10-minute slide.
Yeah.
Or you don't know if you're going to get a slide, or there is no slide. Perfect. Then we know what time the game's going to start. But one of the games we did in Hawaii, the Maui Invitational, we did about a 50-minute pregame show because the first game took forever to finish. The game that was before ours.
Was it the Memphis UConn game? Because that one was.
It may have been the Memphis. Yeah, I mean, so we just go when the game starts. You know what I mean? That's just the way it is. And let me give me another example. The Auburn Georgia game literally came down to the last 0.3 seconds. Yeah. I mean, Georgia had that throw in under their basket, and Newell had a point blank look to tie the game and send it to overtime and missed. Now, some will say there's no way that could have counted because technically you can't get a pass and a shot off in 0.3 seconds. I'm telling you guys, had that thing gone, we were going to overtime that day.
That crew got like 3 plays out of 1.0 seconds, Andy.
Exactly. It was amazing. So the reviews add to it. But there are times when you want to see that review. You want to see if the play is correct, the call is correct or not. We're seeing it in baseball now too. We're seeing it quite a bit now in college baseball. So it's part of our game. I don't think it's going backwards either.
How do you put it back in the box?
I have a
suggestion. I don't think you do.
I have a snarky suggestion. Paging Pat Adams. I think if you could arrange it for the TV cameras, that whenever a review is called, that the referee does not get to see his face on camera. That might reduce the number of reviews called, if you know what I mean.
Yes.
Well, they're doing that, and now it's being fed to us, so we're getting to hear, which is good. At least now at least we know for sure what they're reviewing. There's some times where they put up the review and we're like, until we actually watch it,
what are we doing here?
I'm not sure what they're reviewing. Yeah, are they reviewing a foul? Are you looking at a flagrant? Or I don't know.
And Adams tried to go back 10 minutes earlier in the game, if you'll let him.
Well, now you will see that, and they will do this a lot on 3-pointers now. If you notice, if there's a 3-pointer that's close, you will see an official doing this because they're going to look at it at the next timeout. So it may be 15-13 going into the timeout. It may be 14-13 coming out because they reviewed the 3-point shot at the timeout and determined that the foot was on the line and not behind the line.
Now in the NBA, it's they have the whole replay center in New Jersey that can replay everything, and they do that real time. So in college, is it the refs are the only ones that can review that, or is there a fourth official or somebody that's making that determination?
For regular season games, I think it's only the officials on the floor. When you get to the postseason, there is a fourth official that is on the sideline, that is at where they're reviewing. And it's still going to Birmingham for SEC games. And it goes somewhere else when it comes to the NCAA tournament. But once you get to postseason, including the SEC tournament, you will see a fourth official that is there, and they're there, of course, in case someone is injured, and they can go on the floor. But they're also there for the reviews, and I believe that I'm positive there's a fourth official now that you will see on the sideline for NCAA tournament games as well.
It's just mind-boggling to me how much is going on. But and then when you look at the basketball games, you look over on the sideline on the bench when the players come over for a timeout. There are more analysts and assistants, it seems, standing up than there are players dressed out. It's a different deal. Real quick question from Maury Gaston down in Mountain Brook. Andy, have you read Voices of Summer, a book about the great?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I've got that. I read that a long time ago, and listen. I've been asked about a lot of the generations of broadcasters, and I worked with Jim Fife, who's an absolute legend at Auburn, as is Rob Browne.
Yes.
But everybody has their legends. Everybody has their legends, whether it's Eli Gold or Larry Munson or Jack Crystal or David Kellum or
John Forney at Alabama.
John Forney at Alabama. Regardless where you go. And it's fascinating to get to know some of these men and women that are legends in this sport, and the camaraderie that for the most part is there.
Yeah.
It's an interesting fraternity of folks that I get to see and work with, and I look forward to talking with Tom Leach tomorrow. I saw David Kellum here Wednesday night, and there are times where I'm bouncing technical questions. All right, what's this piece of equipment that you have here? How does it work? Or if there's a problem, I've got this cord. I can help you out here, and vice versa. A lot of folks think that we can't stand each other because of the schools that we work for. And during the game, that's the case. All right. Outside the game, these men are my friends. And I'm so happy to have them.
Let me ask you a question.
I want Andy to hear, or Brad to hear this. There, people can have their own opinions about any and every play-by-play guy or color guy, but if there is a nicer guy, Brad, than Chris Stewart, I'd like to meet him. Just a total prince of a guy and a great play-by-play guy. And
Chris and I have worked together for a long time and I've got a picture here. Let me show you this. All right, this is a picture that's on my desk. It's been on my desk forever. I don't know if you guys can see that or not.
Oh yeah.
All right, that Very is cool. Myself, Chris Stewart, the late Rob Browne, and David Crane, who's now at UAB. And this is when we were the baseball crews for Auburn and Alabama. And that was at what was then an IMG play-by-play retreat. Yeah. And we had dinner together. And I said, let's all get a picture. And that was at that restaurant. So, and Chris and I text back and forth. I did the same thing and still talk with Eli Gold and get ideas. How did you handle this? I remember one day listening to Eli call a football game, the start of a football game, and just how well he painted a picture. I said, Eli, what's going through your mind right now? He says, I'm trying to say everything I'm seeing at that moment.
Yeah.
I'm like, wow,
and you guys also
that's pretty simple, but that's exactly what it is.
Yeah.
So we can all learn from everybody, no matter how long we've been in this business.
Also get to commiserate on how bad different facilities are and which ones you hate going to because they treat you guys, they put you in the bathroom stall to call a game some places. So it's always fun when I hear announcers talk about different arenas or different stadiums and the ones that are good and the ones that are bad and the ones that you wish you never had to go back to. So guys, I got to hop off. It's the last day of the month, so I got to get with my sales team. Always appreciate being with you guys. Andy, nice to meet you on here. Good luck the rest of the season with Auburn because you guys.
Brad, best of luck in Knoxville. You got the same challenge Auburn does in Rupp.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Brett, thank you so much. Landers, Ford, Memphis folks, get out there and see them. They're the best. Andy, one last thing I got to ask Andy about. Do you remember, Andy, when the SEC tournament was in Memphis? And you have to remember this story, Doug. As a Memphian, I fully appreciate it. Jim Fife and the Auburn crew were in a rental car pulling into the hotel in downtown Memphis for the SEC tournament at the Pyramid, and who they thought was the valet came out to get the vehicle and got in it and drove off with all of the broadcast equipment for the Auburn Sports Network. And Auburn, I believe, ended up borrowing Alabama's equipment to call the game. Were you there, Andy?
I was not there. I know this story. Larry Wilkins, who was our legendary engineer, he thought he was giving the car to the valet, and it wasn't the valet. And they found the car later just roached out, completely burned to a crisp. But now I don't know how these guys made money on the radio equipment that was inside. Wow. Yeah, they borrowed the Alabama radio equipment to do, I think, just one game. I think Auburn was in the tournament for one game. Here's an example. 1997, Rod and I are at the College World Series, and that was a year where half of the field was the SEC West, Auburn, Alabama, Mississippi State, and LSU. And Alabama's headphones went out. And so they borrowed our headphones. Fortunately, Auburn and Alabama weren't playing on the same days, so Auburn returned to the favor in 1997. And Barry Allen, who was doing the games back then, used our headphones to do the games. So there's a little cooperation.
Andy, this can be quick. It could be a whole segment if you want to, but I had the pleasure of hearing Jason Campbell speak to a Birmingham Auburn group. And this is in no way a compare and contrast with the great Stan White and the color work he did. But what I'm seeing between you and Jason is a real choreography of Jason's got very high IQ knowledge of, not that you don't, Andy, but you didn't play in the NFL either, nor did I. But I just really like the contrast of his IQ, but he never takes it above my 8th grade reading level when it comes to X's and O's. And are you enjoying the chemistry with Jason as much as it appears in a football game?
I do, and it's important for me, guys, to know this individual. These are my friends. And not only are they my colleagues, and Jason on a football Saturday, and Randall obviously on a Tuesday, Wednesday, or Saturday, and Brad and I work baseball together. Brad's down in Arlington, Texas. He's at the Globe Life Field. He'll do Auburn, Ohio State today at 3:00 on the network. I want to know these gentlemen. I want to know about their families. I want to be a friend of theirs, and vice versa. I think it helps our camaraderie. I think it helps on the air for me. And Jason, listen, he was a fabulous quarterback at Auburn for 4 years, including that 2004 team, which should have played and won a national championship. That's a whole other show. And then, played for a decade in the NFL. And he just brings a rather unique perspective. I mean, I have no idea what that's like to be a quarterback at that high of a level. And he sees things on the field that I do not. And that's what he's there for. And he's also really good. He has a really dry sense of humor, and is he's a valuable part of our crew. And I'm hope that he's with us for a long, long time.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And we're going to wrap up in a minute. I'm going to say, Andy, thank you for going along with this. Sorry it took a minute or two to get you on, but it just means so much to hear from the voice. It's like the stories about Eli Gold and, Rod Bramlett. My God, you and Rod, you've been with so many people, and you just continue to be there. That's the thing about it. And you carry on legacies, and the people that you worked with are in you. You can tell it. You're real. You're genuine. When I see you walking out, when I was talking to you after the ULM game, you're as approachable and personable as it gets. You're what broadcasters are supposed to be. But when we listen to a game on the app, and with you and Jason together, it is a trip, because I'll text him or I'll text you, but your signature line of yes. And then Jason has a way of critiquing things, being critical, but being fair about it. And I appreciate that. And he talked about a story one time on this podcast. He was listening to the Iron Bowl when he was in 9th or 10th grade, riding around on the family's farm over in Taylorsville, Mississippi, listening to the 99 Iron Bowl, I think it was. And he said, I'm going to play in that game one day. And he did. So I'll never forget him as a freshman in 2000 when Tommy Tuberville went back to Oxford for the first time. My friend Barry Blackburn worked with Coach Tuberville, and he had a sideline pass on the field. And Jason Campbell threw passes the entire game, even though he was redshirted, just to show the people at Ole Miss that we were coming after players over there. It was a cool story. But Andy Burcham, thank you. Doug Dean, unbelievable. Brad Bellamy, Coach Matt Dean, executive producer Brenden Martin. And you know why I close a show like that? always listening to the way y'all broadcast. Spotter Kes Fabian, engineer Larry Wilkins, y'all always do that, and thank the crew because it takes a lot of people to make it happen. But Andy, thank you so much.
Have a great call tomorrow. Let's get it done tomorrow, Andy.
Yeah.
My pleasure, guys. Have a great one. War Eagle.
War Eagle. See you, man. Hey, that was awesome, Doug. And the thing is about when you hear these broadcasts and everything, TV, and I think about this with Joe Dean, John Ferguson, and just Tom Hammond. Tom Hammond always looked like the game show host out there, the straight man, and Joe Dean, the former Converse shoe salesman. I mean, it's and by the way,
and I couldn't get enough of Joe Dean Jr. when he was calling.
Oh, he's great.
Auburn basketball. That Thunder reverse dunk by Bryant Smith against Ole Miss.
Yeah.
There's nothing more fun for fans, for partisan fans, to hear their announcer or color analyst lose their mind in a big play.
Well, and you think about Mick Hubert, Florida Gators. Oh my, Doring's got a touchdown. The radio is the conduit. TV's great, but when you and by the way, you're right. Pro tip: pause 3 or 4 seconds, and you'll perfectly sync
up the app and the TV. It's fun, and in the Jim Fife little habits these announcers develop, like a thunder dunk. Like Charles Barkley. Hello, Leeds, Alabama.
Yeah. They're the
just
best.
A blast. And TV just is not set up to do that the same way.
It's not. Radio is. And let me say, get out to Hewlett and Dunn this weekend, folks. 50% off sale on the rack. Doug, they've got Filson, Pendleton. They got this shirt here, the Glacier National Park shirt from Pendleton.
Your sponsors are perfect for what we're doing.
Yeah, Devil Dog jeans, Filson luggage, Barber, over 7,000 pairs of men's and women's boots. I'm getting Brenden a pair of size 11.5 boots. They're going to be made out of alligator, ostrich, rattlesnake. I don't know, but the big guy's going to have some cool boots from Hewlett and Dunn. Open Monday through Saturday, 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. And all of our sponsors like My Town Roofing, Web-Footed Kennels, Matei's Garage over on Black Road in East Memphis, right by Folks Folly, open Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Larry Cervetti, y'all all know him. He's also got Cordova Automotive. Andrew and Dean there working on my truck yesterday. Great people to have on your side. All of our sponsors. And remember, the Vitamin Shop in Oxford, Mississippi has been rebranded. It's Oxford Vitamin Company off of Jackson Road, right next to Dick's Sporting Goods. So most often we see the face of Christ in the least among us. Have a great weekend, everybody. Thanks for watching. Share the show, and we will see you Monday, man. If anything big happens over the weekend, you never know. Brenden might text me for a pop-up show, Doug. So be ready to rumble.
I'm on deck.
All right. Take care, man. Thank you. All right.